Greetings and salutations. Welcome to our first step in the Decan series, as the sun has entered a tropical Aries. I would have said today, but I didn't get to record this last week, so we're well into the Decan still. Better late than never. I have already covered astrology and tarot basics in previous videos, so if you're brand new to either topic, you can go through those first. I'll have a blog post up, hopefully within the next week or so, with all of the graphics and tables as well for future reference. Okay. Aries 1, as the name implies, is the first decan in Aries. This is the moment that kicks off the zodiacal year. It is also the spring equinox when we can start to expect longer days and shorter nights. The time for rest and recovery is over, and it is time to go. Okay, Aries in general, fire sign, cardinal sign, ruled by Mars. According to the triplicity definitions, the first decan is ruled by Mars, and the Chaldean method also agrees. Therefore, we have double Mars rulership giving us a huge push toward action. We can expect themes of heat, combat, initiation, and direct movement. We get no break from partial rulership. It is Mars all the way down. As part of this, a major scholar on the topic, Austin Coppock, calls this decan the axe. It is time to cut our own path through the jungle, destroying whatever stands between us and our goals. It is time for energy, passion, and a forward drive toward whatever comes next for us. I love the symbology of the axe here. Its only job is to cut and chop. We can see the axe as the tool used in sacrifice. We have records of an axe standing in for the person who killed a sacrificial animal, but it's also used in clearing paths and harvesting. This is the time in spring where winter crops would be harvested or cover crops would be cut down to nourish the soil before planting. In all cases, it is a tool for necessary destruction in order for our larger goals to be successful. When the medieval texts are talking about this decan, they love to describe imagery often used for occult purposes. These are the images that you would put on talismans if you're trying to do particular kinds of magical working during this period. These images are another way for us to understand the energy. We consistently see the description of an armed man, especially one holding an axe. They seem restless, and the colors we see repeated are red and black. To aid with understanding, we can also take a look at the spirits associated with this moment. First is the Egyptian spirit, Khentu Keru. Although not a well-documented spirit, we can see references to him as a warrior or chief, and he was in charge of harvest season. This may call back to the imagery of the axe, but for more agricultural purposes. In the Greco-Roman arena, we actually get Hades. This might give us some pause for those of us familiar with his myths. How can we compare him to this bold martial image that we've already been given? There are some great theories on the internet, and here is what I think. Although Hades doesn't present as a martial god, he is someone who rules and takes what he wants, like his wife, without worrying about the consequences. He has the freedom to make the direct path. The next decan is actually ruled by Persephone, so I think that this theme of him and his wife is one we should give the most weight to, especially considering that Persephone is about spring. Second, one of our sources, the Picatrix, also includes the phrase wealth without difference when describing the image of this decan. This can be interpreted as wealth without the need to be differentiated or wealth without being flashy. Hades was also considered a wealthy god. His Roman name is Pluto or Pluton, and his domain includes precious metals or gems that are under the ground. But still, Hades isn't a flashy figure, so maybe this is part of that connection. I'm not sure, and if you have other thoughts, I'd love to hear them. While it's helpful to know what imagery and spirits go with this period of time, I think the most important thing is try to bring that all back into what it looks like, what it feels for us as humans. I think this time feels very physically tense, and it has an internal heat from the intensity of the work that we have to do. There's an almost blinders on kind of narrow focus, and I like the idea of a kind of a consistent beat, the drums of war, your pounding heart, the axe cutting down an obstacle in a very rhythmic way. I would say the color starts as gray because no color is necessary. And then I also think of it as kind of the embers having died down from the end of the year. And now at the beginning, we are blowing the embers off. It is smoky and hot, and we go from that gray into flame. We know well the taste of ashes because of this, and it is part of what drives us forward. With that in mind, we can now zoom back out and look at Aries and the stars and constellations that have to do with this decan. Of course, we have to start with the stories involving Aries. Aries is a very symbolic constellation of the ram. The ram is an image of masculine fertility, of sacrifice and leadership. The constellation itself is just a line of stars with a kind of a bend in it, and it looks not much like a ram itself. which tells me that its name was chosen because of the season and not because of the stars themselves. In this case, it's the stars that bent to fit the narrative that people already understood. The main myth for this constellation in the Greco-Roman era is that of a magical winged golden ram that was sent by the gods to save Phrixus and his sister Helle. Only partially successful, only Phrixus made it. Phrixus sacrificed the ram, and then his golden fleece became part of Jason and the Argonauts' story as well. The ancient Egyptians instead attached this constellation to Amun-Ra, a god that was often depicted with a ram's head to represent both fertility and war. The Babylonians called this constellation, or the main star in this constellation, the hired man, whose job was to harvest crops. There is an interesting theme amongst these three myths. First of all, Amun-Ra is an amalgamation of Amun and Ra, and Amun was considered a hidden god. The word hired man in Babylonian can also mean hidden treasure. The golden fleece was also hidden and guarded. So this makes me ask, what is hidden but valuable? What must I cut down or strip away in order to find the thing that I consider treasure? Now, talking about fixed stars, we don't actually get to talk about the fixed stars in Aries due to something called the precession of the stars. In fact, tropical Aries is sidereal Pisces, so we are entirely out of the realm of a one-to-one match. If you want details on why that is, I will try to include that in the blog post when it comes up in a week or two, but there's plenty of online resources about tropical versus sidereal, which systems use which, and, the ongoing fights we have as astrologers. There are two fixed stars that are currently inside of Aries 1 that I want to talk about. The first is Deneb Kaitos. It's the tail of Caitos the sea monster, and it sits at 2.35 degrees. It's traditionally associated with self-destruction and forced change. However, by the Chinese name Tusikong, it translates as master of constructions. This is military engineering, digging trenches, clearing roads, building the infrastructure that makes the campaign possible. The monster's tail and the builder's axe are the same tool here. And I think it's interesting that they both involve destruction. One is more constructive and one is not. Algenib is the second star. It's the wingtip of the Pegasus, and it sits at 9.09 degrees. It is one of the three guides that marks the prime meridian of the heavens. It is sharp, swift, pioneering, and it marks direction as much as it cuts. This is the axe that knows where it's going, or the guide to make sure you're cutting down the right thing. Hopefully, these two stars can add some more understanding to the kind of energy that we feel in this Decan. We've already passed by Deneb Kaitos at this point, but Algenib waits for us fully conjunct on March 29th. And now we come to the tarot correspondences. We start with the Two of Wands, which is also called Dominion in the Thoth deck. The Two of Wands is a card of contemplation. As a Wands card, we are in the domain of creativity and passion, with the two being more about duality and partnership and the problems inherent with that. The art of the cards ask us, is the duality the two wands standing as staffs accompanying the man, or is the duality the man and the globe he contemplates? If the wands are the duality, then this card is what happens when we grow from the idea to create one thing to the idea to share it and to expand from that original single creation. If it is the man and the globe, we can see this as the beginning of the moment of conflict that's often present in wands. This idea of man versus the rest of the world. I love Chang's thoughts on the Two of Wands, the recognizing of the other and that recognition being kind of greedy, that there's a desire to consume, dominate, and overtake. This is the heart of the action here. This is the need to move, to accomplish, to do. There is a recognition of where the goal is, but not necessarily time to plan or figure out an easy way. Our energy must move in that direction, and if necessary, we will cut down, burrow, or swim our way there. And I think finally it's important to recognize that with this being the axe, that we're still wands and not swords. That although we are sharp and destructive, that is not our only purpose. We can both create and destroy with this tool. Let's move on to the majors associated here. We start with the card for Mars, which is the Tower, and Mars rules both this decan and the sign in general. The Tower is a card of consequences and destruction. It is a card that tells us that running down the wrong path is going to lead to problems. I often use this card to say that we've been listening to a fire alarm going off for a while and we haven't obeyed it, and our normal forms of exit have closed. Now, this means that I don't see this card as helpful destruction. This card is a warning, both for Aries in general and for Aries 1 in particular, that yes, you should be moving. Choose wisely and move soon. On the other hand, the card for Aries is the Emperor, and the Emperor feels like a calmer, more stable energy. And honestly, I was a little perplexed at first. Why is Aries the Emperor? Here's what I've got so far. First, I started by working from original principles. Although the Emperor feels like the right fit for a cardinal, as he's a king, I wouldn't necessarily make him a fiery one. I think of him as cool and calculated. He doesn't give off the impulsive, hot-headed, or creative, passionate energy I would expect from this element. I might be getting the Emperor wrong, or there might be some other nuance here. So, does he fit? And then the question is, does the Emperor fit within the story of Wands? Well, as we said, the story of Wands involves a story of man versus everyone. And then we can see the Emperor as the ultimate ideal of that tale. So I'll let him live here, I guess. The next thing I did is that I looked at what tarot cards were attached to each cardinal sign and to see if there was some kind of pattern that I was missing. And I do think one emerges. It does look like the tarot cards for each cardinal sign shows the ideal that sign is striving for and what its ultimate goal is. So I can see definitely that if the Emperor is the ideal for Wands and we're in the Wand suit, then the Emperor is kind of the ideal for Aries. The Emperor is the ultimate masculine energy here, cool, calm, and collected because he's already won. He's already done the work. He's the ultimate authority. He's entirely in charge. He's responsible for the fate of himself and his nation. That's the Emperor, and that's the ultimate goal that Aries wants, to be the one in charge, to be authority, to not have to listen to anyone else. So that is the success that Aries strives to achieve, and the only gap here is the wisdom. So how do we get from here to there? And so this need for wisdom of knowing when to run, where to run, or how to get from step A to step Z is the Queen of Wands. She's not there to typify or further explain the energy of this time. She's here to give us something to lean on when this energy feels too intense or we start to feel confused. She deeply understands our urges to make big moves and accomplish our goals. We are standing where she stood, although a while ago. Her hope is that you come to her for advice and that you listen. She is the calmer, sweeter yin to the Emperor's yang, and she's also hopefully there to guide you away from your tower situations. She is a reminder that we are not actually alone. We stand on the shoulders of giants, and we walk a path that many have walked before. Now that we're done with tarot, let's take a more astrological viewpoint about what this space means in terms of our charts, both birth and transit. There are some planets that thrive in this space, and there are some that struggle. Mars double rules, triple rules if you count the sign in general, and so he is thoroughly at home. This is his native energy. He is in charge. His goals are the goals of the Decan, and his goals are often destructive in nature. This is why it's important to give him something to do. Idle hands are the devil's playthings. The sun is exalted in this whole sign, although he doesn't have a major role to play here. So he is superpowered, he has zero responsibilities, and he is mostly dealing with his own issues. He wants to teach you how to be selfish or self-driven, the danger being that this can become harmful, and that is our personal cross to bear here. Venus is in detriment. The vibes are off, she is uncomfortable and slightly pissed off here. The thermometer is set wrong, it's too hot for her. The music is bad, think hardstyle instead of something lovely and slow. She is going to strive to create good, but she may easily focus on things that feel good instead of things that are actually useful. More destructive pleasures instead of prosperity and bounty. This can be manageable, it will require extra care, and this problem kind of comes to a peak in the third decan. You'll see. Now, the other good planet, Jupiter, is totally neutral here. His desire to expand and improve are a little at odds with the singular focus that is Aries 1. His ability to act well is then mostly determined by whether or not Mars is in a good mood. If Mars is well placed, then Jupiter's energies can be funneled into success. But if Mars is doing poorly, Jupiter may take the axe and just cut the whole forest down in order to accomplish your goals. Mercury is similarly neutral, although his skill with words is just not useful in this sign. So he has the same problem with Mars being well placed. He's going to be able to be skilled and direct and get things done. But if Mars is not well placed, he may end up being blunt and cruel. He may accomplish his goals, but it's not going to feel good while he's doing it. The moon is also neutral here. She wants to deal with things that are emotional and private, and Aries 1 doesn't really have time for any of that business. So what we'll see, again, Mars well behaved. She might be able to deal better with things that are high energy. She might be able to assist with dealing with anger or destructive. She might help you become more adaptable to change. But if Mars is not doing well, then you might get mired in these feelings. You might not be able to focus as well as you want as you're trying to do things. Last but not least, Saturn is in fall. For him, the whole gravity is wrong. He is used to something heavy and slow, but in Aries 1, he takes a step and he bounces. He struggles to breathe as the air is too thin for him. And so when he can act, he's going to act out. But often he's going to struggle to accomplish anything at all. The things that he tries to do are going to go wrong, and because both Mars and Saturn are not naturally happy energies, it might go wrong in a really bad way. In general, when I see Saturn in Aries, I kind of expect sudden stops and starts, because Saturn is about slow, steady growth, delays, blockages. In a place where we're going 90 miles an hour, that can feel even more dangerous. Now, if you are a masochistic Saturn, you're going to love this because you're going to love the delays and the difficult things. And you may lean into this and make things worse for yourself. So be especially careful if you have a strong birth Saturn here. I think with this knowledge, it becomes a lot easier to see how energetically each planet is going to feel. This is Mars's home territory. Saturn is going to be difficult. The sun will have its ego fed. The moon and Mercury will suffer from the directness. There is little time or space to wiggle or shapeshift, and while Mercury can thrive off quickness, he doesn't do well with sustained singular focus. For Venus and Jupiter, Venus needs consideration to avoid excess, which we don't have here, and Jupiter will want to go in all directions at once, which can be good, but it also can be dangerous. Because we're following the sun, I want to spend a little bit more time with the sun in this decan before we move on. The sun in general represents the truth that shines brightly inside us, the things about us that are always true, unchanging, and eternal. When we look at where it is placed in your chart, the sign and the house are going to tell us a lot about what is important to us and the ways in which we show our care. The energy here pushes us to do something about our beliefs and to make steps toward our goals to become more self-centered in some way. If this is your birth sun, this is going to be a constant state. But for us in this moment, this is an encouragement to make sure that we are acting our truth. So, who's currently in Aries 1? The sun is here and will be here until March 30th. Saturn is here, and he'll be here until May 8th. He's going to be in Aries for a while, so his difficulties will be our difficulties. Try to give grace to both yourself and others right now. Mars enters Aries 1 on April 9th, and he leaves April 22nd. So that period will be a period to really work on making sure you are constructively active and not self-destructive. Finally, Mercury enters and exits while Mars is present. It enters April 14th and leaves April 21st. So while we're trying to be proactively constructive, it's going to be important for us to also watch how we speak to one another. So, before I start talking about how to magically or mundanely use the energies that are present right now, I need to discuss what some people may have already noticed. I consider Mars to be a purely destructive force. Maybe he can be bent for more productive aims. A wildfire can restore balance to a forest, for example, but at his very base nature, he is not the greatest. I sometimes see the hope that you can ask him to pass by your house and destroy someone else instead. I find it really interesting that some people really strongly want Mars to have a protective element here, and I'm not sure that I buy it. I think maybe you can hope for him to be in a good mood and capable of being funneled in a direction. I think the main warning here is that you need to pick a target, or one may be picked for you. Be the axe, not the tree. Be the lumberjack, not the forest. something along those lines. I acknowledge that my bias is because of traditional astrology, so I highly, highly encourage you to spend your time thinking about these martial energies, what you experience, what you see in your chart, and make your own decision. Does Mars ever feel strongly constructive or helpful for you? If yes, in what ways? And if not, how can you be careful, mitigate, or just survive through his actions? Just keep in mind, the axe is sharp. Something is going to be destroyed. Now, if you are someone who wants something practical to do with all of this, here are some ideas from the most mystical to the most mundane. If you like working with spirits, there are a couple of great ideas. First, the sun in this decan is exalted, so now is a great time to really investigate solar influence and work with it, especially when it comes to empowering your ability to act on your truth. You might also want to start work with Hades to continue into the next decan. Working with the procession of Persephone through the realm of Hades up into the land for spring might be a great 2-decan project. If you want something that feels more astrology-led, you can look at where Pluto is in your chart and spend some time with him in his place and consider how he impacts that house for you. Pluto, of course, as I said, is the Roman name for Hades, and so you're kind of grabbing him and putting him in your chart. If you want something that is more tarot-based, I would look into trying to invoke the Queen of Wands for guidance at this time. If you want to just work with the basic energies of this decan, either mystically or mundanely, this is a time for action and not reflection. You need to go do things. Sure, light a red or yellow candle for the Mars or the Sun, and then go get something done. Clean, especially if you can declutter and get rid of things. Pick weeds and prepare to plant your garden. Find a way to destroy in order to make space for your creations. Now, if you insist on self-reflection or you want something to do as well as your active things, I do have some journal pages available. They'll be linked in the description below. Now, Aries 1, it's not subtle. It asks one thing of you: move, go, do. Pick your target, raise your axe, and go. The Queen of Wands is there when it gets to be too much, and I'll see you in Aries 2. No, I don't like that.